Hello, hello, hello. We are going to be doing some tapping for guilt and shame. So many of us carry this throughout our lifetime, and we learn this as a child. We actually bring this guilt and shame all the way from childhood memories. So it's important that we reflect on what has brought us this far. What has caused us to take this on, this guilt and shame, because what we do is from childhood on, we just continue to pile it on and pile it on and pile it on. So one thing we need to do is get real. We need to figure it out. What is the question? What's the real question? Why? What is the motivation behind this? So is it perfectionism? Is that why we criticize and punish ourselves? Because we're not perfect? And when we are striving for perfectionism, it is always leading back to the expectation of perfection early in life from someone who was influential. Whether it's our parents telling us, it starts so young, you're a good girl, good boy, or you're a bad girl or bad boy. So we start equating things with good and bad. And with tapping, for those of you that are new to tapping, I'm just going to give you a brief explanation. We have experiences that have triggered emotions, and we hold those experiences in our subconscious. And that's what tapping, or EFT, emotional freedom technique, helps us with. We tap those stories out. So a lot of times we can tap. So I have different videos, tapping for miracles, tapping for, you can always hop on YouTube and look at one of my videos, tapping out the bullshit and tapping in the good shit, something like that. So we need to tap out the limiting beliefs and tap in the new beliefs. So we are going to do guilt and shame today, because guilt and shame will keep us stuck. Okay? So there's a lot of ways to look at this. And I want you to start, maybe get a piece of paper and you're honestly going to begin jotting down what it is you feel guilty or ashamed about. So is there anything from childhood so for me, I'll give you some examples for myself. I just uncovered this past year the guilt that I carried as a very young girl, 6 years old, being molested by neighborhood children. It was a family of children. They had, 4 or 5 kids, and they were all involved in this molestation thing that I got pulled into as a little, 4 years old. But I just uncovered this year, I had buried this memory so deep. I had no idea that I was carrying the guilt of not protecting other children who were brought into that circle of molestation. So number one, I didn't protect them. I didn't do anything to help them or sound the whistle. I didn't tell anyone. And so I carried that my entire lifetime. That, my friend, is a major, major block to all the good stuff showing up. It truly is. That is the guilt that we carry will cause this unworthy vibration within us. I'm unworthy. I'm a piece of shit. I didn't do anything. That was me. That was my story. So we also have to look at any guilt or shame that we carry with money and choices that we have made in the past with money. Because if we are hanging on to those choices that we feel were big mistakes, or I shouldn't have done this because it cost this much, or I had to file bankruptcy, or it caused my family stress, whatever, it's in the past. We got to let that shit go. But we have to be real with ourselves and get to the bottom of everything and what it is that we feel guilty or shameful about. Is there anything that we did in a relationship that we feel guilty or shameful about? I had lots of that with my marriage, where I was carrying the guilt and shame of having an affair on my husband while he was in Afghanistan. Even though, here's the thing too, I had carried all of the guilt and shame when I went back and did the tapping and forgave myself and let it go. I realized And it was not a scapegoat or making excuses. It was just, I really went back to that story and I thought, you know, he signed up for a year against my wishes. He volunteered for a year and I've said, hell no. And we'd just been married for 2 years. But he went for a year and 1 year turned into 8 years. Now, I didn't wait 8 years to have an affair. I had an affair going on year 2. As soon as he said he was signing up for another year, that's when my heart began to stray. But see, I took it as rejection. He'd rather choose that war instead of coming home to be with his wife. I mean, these stupid stories that we start. So I carried guilt for not only having an affair, but then divorcing him while he's in a war-ridden place. And so everything that I did, so I just started this whole guilt trip. You're a piece of crap. Look at all the mistakes you've made. Even with money, I had lots of money stories. I still work through money stories now. I mean, even with my business, I have not always made decisions that turned out exactly like I thought, you know, that they'd be this prosperous, prosperous bag of money or wealth showing up, but other things showed up, or I learned other things through that process. So we have to get into all the stories. And so start jotting down, what are all the reasons, what are all the things that I feel guilty about? Or what are the reasons I feel guilty? Name them. Maybe you have a column for money. Maybe there's a relationship one. Maybe there's a, relationships would cover like being a mom or a daughter or whatever. What do you feel guilty about? Let's get real. Let's get it out. Let's get it on a piece of paper. Let's get it concrete in front of us. And also acknowledging any thoughts or patterns of this perfectionism, or that I need to make other people happy, or I have to make sure everyone else is happy, or that everyone else is, because that's what we'll do. We'll try to do the right thing, always coming from a place of love. But it's like this, again, wanting approval, because we learn that at a very young age that we need approval, which is bullshit, but that's what we tell ourselves. So get your list, write it out. If any emotions start coming up, and just let them flow, this is the time to release them. We're going to let them come up, come out. And a lot of times when I'm journaling or writing these things down, I'll ask the universe, like, what else is there? Bring it up. Show me right now. Because we don't want to face them. It's like, damn it. Okay. I did that. So I hate that that's right there on this paper in front of me, but that's why it's so important. So pause this recording if you need to take a few moments, because what we're going to do is you're going to get your list, and then we're going to do some tapping. Because we are, guilt and shame actually keeps us in our safe zone. You're going to die when I tell you this, but that's your comfort zone. You don't have to do anything else when you can sit here and stay in this little tunnel vision and beat yourself up. And then you wonder why I'm trying to do other things in my life, but nothing's happening, because I have this little cocoon of shame and guilt that's keeping me safe. So we're going to get ourselves rid of this guilt and shame once and for all. So make your list, pause this if you need to, and we'll get to tapping shortly. So I want to add a little bit more before we get to tapping. A lot of people carry a legacy of guilt. Women are notorious for this. We carry the guilt from the people who came before us. It might be where we grew up. It might be the place where we come from, our family, our personal culture. And in almost every culture, guilt and shame are used to control people in one way or another. So people that came before us, our ancestors, often didn't have the choices that we have today. And guilt became this handy tool to keep their mouths shut and to keep their feet firmly rooted in place, so that they wouldn't, put themselves into unsafe situations. Again, I'm telling you, this is all about the need for feeling safe. Many people have the habit of taking full responsibility and making it all their own fault, and thus feeling so guilty if anything goes wrong. This way they feel that at least they can take the pain away from someone else by taking full responsibility for every wrong that ever happened. I wonder how many of us are guilty of taking everything on. Taking everything on, full responsibility for everything, from taking, as these sweet, beautiful souls that we're here as, these some of us earth angels, indigos, crystals, we want to take the pain from others. And so we take it on, this full responsibility for every wrong that ever happens. And this starts in childhood. It starts in childhood. When things aren't going, working out the way that we expect it to, the safest thing for a child to think is that they are in charge. It's all about them. Children, I'm the center of the universe. And therefore, if something broke and mommy's mad, I must have done something wrong. It really does make sense. This is this whole psychological part of it all that we're trying to tap out of, or tap the, the subconscious stuff out. All right, so what happens is we carry it forward into our adult lives and it becomes a habit, a limiting belief, something that no longer serves us. It becomes unconscious. We end up growing into adults who actually think we can somehow control our world if we take responsibility for everything. Because there's still the little kid in us who's trying to feel safe. So when you're tapping, it's important to look at take a look at the inner child, where that belief was formed early on. So for example, if I take responsibility for everything that has happened around me, then somehow I'll keep myself safe, which of course never works. You just keep yourself down. I mean, growing up as a preacher's daughter, it was, judgment by all from day one on. Right? From my parents, from the church that my dad would preach in, the community. Right? So talk about guilt and shame. It was a lifetime of that. Guilt and shame over don't ever ask for too much. Don't ever, that we're here to serve. And somehow I equated this service equals poor or lack, because I was supposed to feel guilty if I asked for more. Okay, so we're going to start tapping. And so choose something that you're feeling guilty about. Just one thing right now, okay? And let's focus on that one thing that you feel guilty about. Let me get a sip of water. And you're going to start tapping on the karate chop spot on your hand. So karate chop into the palm of your hand, just tapping there. Again, if you're not familiar with these tapping points, then pause this and go to YouTube and watch one of my videos, or just tap in EFT for beginners or something like that. And you'll find a video that will show you where the tapping points are. So the side of the hand, tapping on the side of the hand. Even though I have this guilt, and I feel horrible about it, I love and accept myself anyway. Even though I have this guilt, and it haunts me, it won't seem to go away. I love and accept these feelings. Even though I have this debilitating guilt that keeps getting in my way and causing me to make choices that I know aren't right for me, I love and accept myself anyway. Now tapping on the eyebrow, the inside of the eyebrow, this debilitating guilt. Side of the eye, this guilt that haunts me. Under the eye, this guilt that just hurts so much. Under the nose, this debilitating guilt. On the chin, this guilt that just won't go away. Collarbone, this guilt that makes me feel bad about myself. Under the arm, this guilt that I can't stand being with. Top of the head, this guilt, this horrible guilt. Now take a deep breath and notice anything that occurred for you, like any thoughts that came up. You might have thought of something else that you feel guilty about, or something on your list might be taking front and center coming up. Okay, that is your intuition guiding you as to what we need to work on. So take a deep breath and use this next round of tapping for that story. If a story occurs, you can start saying the story out loud and tap right through the feeling or telling of that story. So if a certain story comes out, you can replace, or you can use those words in the tapping session with me. You can just replace any words that you need to, or you can just use the words that I say. So tapping on the side of the hand. Back to that karate chop point. Even though I'm carrying a legacy of guilt, like a backpack on my back, I choose to release it now. Even though I'm carrying this guilt for my parents, for their parents, and for the people who came before, I deeply and profoundly accept myself and them and this history. Even though I carry a legacy of guilt that prevents me from moving forward in life, I choose to take a deep breath. I release this weight. And I take a step forward. Even though I carry a legacy of guilt that I can't identify, I choose to release it now. Tapping on the eyebrow, this legacy of guilt. Side of the eye, the guilt that my mother had. Under the eye, the guilt that my father had. Under the nose, the guilt that their parents had. Chin, the guilt of any authority figure who influenced me. Collarbone, this legacy of guilt. Under the arm, this heavy backpack. Eyebrow, this heavy weight of guilt. Side of the eye, this guilt that belongs to somebody else. Under the eye, I'm letting it go. Under the nose, I'm letting it go completely. Chin, I'm releasing this weight. Collarbone, I'm letting the guilt go forever. Under the arm, I'm releasing my mother. Top of the head, I'm releasing my father. Eyebrow, I'm releasing everyone who came before me. Side of the eye, who carried guilt themselves. Under the eye, I release my ancestors from this guilt. Under the nose, I release my ancestors from all of this guilt. Chin, I'm letting it go now. Collarbone, I feel lighter. Under the arm, I feel freer. Top of the head, I feel ready. And I feel able to live my life more fully and completely. Take a deep breath. Release it. And let's do one more round. Tapping on the side of the hand. Even though I have a little kid inside who carries guilt because he or she thought she was the cause of everything, I choose to release her now. Even though I have this little kid inside who interrupts my movement forward by believing that she is in charge of everything and the cause of everything, I choose to let her go and play now. Even though I have this little kid inside who's deeply connected to my guilt, I choose to release her from this guilt and live my life more fully. Tapping on the eyebrow, this little kid inside who feels so guilty. Side of the eye, this little kid who feels responsible for every bad thing. Under the eye, this little kid who trips me up today as an adult. Under the nose, by making me feel guilty. And when I feel guilty, I seek punishment. Chin, I'm so good at punishing myself. Collarbone, I do it all the time. Under the arm, I drink things I shouldn't drink. Top of the head, I eat food I shouldn't eat. Eyebrow, I hang out with people that I know better than to hang out with. Side of the eye, I stay in a job way longer than I should. Under the eye, I stop myself from doing things I really want to do. Under the nose, all because of the habit formed by this little kid who was just trying to stay safe. Chin, but I'm safe now. Collarbone, I'm an adult. I'm in charge. I release this guilt. I release this child. Under the arm, I am free from guilt. Top of the head, I feel at peace with the unfolding of my life. I set that little girl free. All right, just take a deep breath and just notice anything that came up, any thoughts that came up, and did anything else come up? If it did, then use those thoughts or those things that came up and do another round of tapping. So I hope that you felt the magnitude of that tapping session and knowing that not only are you setting yourself free, but you are setting your parents free, your ancestors free. We are shifting the legacy of guilt for many, many souls. When we set ourselves free, we set others free. The key to tapping is that you continue to do it until you no longer have those stories that come up, the emotions that come up. You may feel things during tapping. For me, I yawn occasionally. I actually yawn a lot if it's something I'm really releasing within me. So I might be tapping and not have any clue that how deep it is, and then this big yawn comes out of me. And I know, and I'm ready to yawn right now, excuse me, which I'm yawning because that tapping session was obviously releasing some guilt that I have pent up. And as I was tapping, when we were tapping it away from our parents and grandparents and ancestors, I was picturing certain people, like my grandfather came to mind. And I had a lot of guilt and shame attached with him. And I know that he felt the same. So it made sense that his face came to mind. So continue the tapping. It's so important that we begin to not only uncover what we feel guilt and shame about, but that we bring it to the surface and that we tap it out and that we allow that inner child to evolve, to come out, to shine, and to play. All right, happy tapping to you. God bless.